right. If y'all would, let's stand and say the pledge. Yes. Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll try to begin. Got it.
Yeah. So, good evening. Oh, man, just all out of sorts today. Um, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah and Nicole in just a moment, but I just wanted to kind of welcome everyone here. We're in a special meeting to talk about the Parks and Recreation Master Plan that we're very excited about. Um, um, Sarah and Nicole have worked very hard on this, and I'm excited for you guys to see what they've been working on. So, Shannon, unless you have anything else,
Nope, I'm just looking forward to hearing it. See what we got to look forward to.
Sarah, it's all yours.
Well, again, thank you guys for being here. I appreciate it. This is a really fun project to be involved in, and I am grateful for the opportunity. My name is Sarah Burrows with Sage Design, for those that don't know me, and I've been working with Nicole and the community on this for several months now, trying to get input and ideas. And we started that process off with just trying to understand the site, what's there, the acreage, the existing wetlands, the soils. You guys saw from the rain last week, the literal floodplain line, and that's receded. So we've got a lot of really good information, and we had a fantastic input session here in the park and online and with the survey. So I'm going to highlight that in a minute. Where we are right now is analyzing all of that information and putting it together to come back to you with two concepts. Our goal this evening is not to pick concept A or concept B. We really want to understand what you like and don't like from each of them. And we will come back to you with a consolidated plan with the things that you like from those plans and hopefully removing the things you don't like. So we're not asking for a vote today. We really want to get feedback and have an open conversation about things that you like, things that you don't like, and anything you think might be missing from the plan. We had a great conversation with the park board last night and got some additional input and ideas from them. So it's a really great process. And I appreciate the time that everyone's taken because I feel like we're really able to make it your plan for the community so that it's enjoyed and used as your phase that you have out there right now. So I do want to highlight real quick how we got here with the ideas as a reminder from the input we received. So if we go to the next slide, we had over 1,100 survey responses, 1,171 survey responses, which is phenomenal. That was actually more than our comprehensive plan. So I feel like we've gotten some really wonderful participation from across the community. We had great input from the kids across from the playground, people walking on the trail. So there's a really good cross section of feedback. So what I did want to highlight really quickly are the top 10 things from that survey. I know we've gone over this before, but just as a start up top, the conversation about the concept. So the top 10 are trails, pools and splash pad, indoor recreation, farmers market and food trucks, access to nature and open space, separating that tennis and pickleball, having access to multi-use field, events, lawn and space, expanding the dog park and disc golf. There are a whole host of other wonderful ideas. And I think there are some things that we can include throughout that list but those are the ones that we highlighted. We got great ideas from the kids on other things they might like to include, like gaga pits and having remote control tracks and things like that. So there are a lot of really neat detail level things that we can start to talk about when we consolidate that plan. What I'm hoping to have a conversation about this evening really is kind of those fundamental, the circulation of the site and how we're moving around it and kind of where those big pieces are on these two concepts. And then we'll come back and work in a lot of those details and really fun ideas on the next iteration. So we have two concepts, and I'm going to go over those concepts and walk you through them. And then we're going to do a feedback session where we're going to use our sticky notes in front of you and ask what you like and what you don't like, and review that and make sure that we have all of the ideas you'd like to see incorporated. So that's our process. And then we'll come back. I believe we're supposed to come back in April is what we, yeah. So there will be some iterations before that. But our goal is to come back for approval in April. Go to concept A. So there's two major differences in these two concepts. There are a lot of similarities. The two differences really, is there a pointer on this?
Yeah, did that not twice, 2 times in a row.
Okay. So I think I might just stand up if that's okay. Okay. I'll stand up here so you guys can see. So the major differences in the two plans are the way that the vehicular circulation is proposed throughout the park site. One of the biggest challenges of having that additional acreage is making sure it operates as one cohesive park space. And right now your park is linear like this and your cars come through it. And so we don't want to have a long-term conflict between your park users running around in the park and the cars. So we would like to try and consolidate that vehicular access around so that you're not cutting right through the middle of your park. So concept A, you would come in the existing entrance that you have, and you'd have a roundabout here, and you could access the new acreage this way. On this concept, we circle around and connect up to the back parking lot that's backed by your trail connection and the baseball field. And then secondarily, you could come in this main entranceway and come over here, and we would try to work a stop sign on this area and connect around this way. And what we're proposing is on both of them is cutting off that circulation in the middle, so that you can have pedestrians and trails going through the center of that and not having cars, and cars. So that's the hope in both of the concepts, but this one connects around that back parking lot in this way. So if you come into the park, we would propose expanding the dog park in this direction, having a bike plaza up here, and I'll walk through this, and then when you have questions at the end, we can kind of cycle through if you have questions about what something is. So you would drive around, and then we're proposing having an area here for a future recreation building. Access to indoor recreation came through as one of those features people would like to see. The way that space would be used, there was interest in having indoor fitness and gymnasiums and things like that, and that's a longer range plan, but we want to make sure you have space for that down the road. So that's the allocation of that there. And then we are proposing 2 multi-purpose fields over here. Those are the size of a high school soccer field, and they can be divided up for lacrosse and flag football and youth soccer in different ways. You would come around the park road here, and in the back corner, you would have a bike skills area and nature-based play back in the corner. And then on this concept, we're proposing keeping that one farm building as the market building in the back. We still do not have the feedback or input on the ability to use those structures. So we will get that information and know for sure. We need to make sure they're structurally sound and understand what needs to happen to make them public ready. These have been used as private business operations, and there's definitely a different standard that needs to happen for public use. We need to meet accessibility and there's safety issues, and so we need to get that information back to come back to you on whether or not we can use that building. But we are proposing using that building in this concept if it can be used. And then you would come around and connect into the existing parking lot. We're proposing moving the maintenance in both concepts down in the corner out of the core of the park. It's not a feature that's typically in the middle of a park. You want to have your storage and maintenance and access and equipment usually on the outside edge of your park. And we would look at reusing this building for recreational programming use in the future. These dark lines on here all represent greenway trail, additional trail. One of the concepts has about 1.6 miles and the other one has about 1.8 miles of additional trail. So all said and done, if we connect those through, our goal would be to try and have sort of 5K on there. In order to do that, we need to make a few modifications. We talked about this last night to make sure we've got the right distance in there, but that would be our goal when we refine this, is to have enough trail mileage in there so that we can have a 5K, which is a really great asset from a park standpoint because it's hard to find those spaces to run that distance off-road without vehicular conflict. So that's pretty exciting. We're proposing 2 additional river access locations. And then on this area, we're looking at doing 100 to 150 foot buffer. We don't have that completely ironed out yet, but we would look at doing that as part of a stream restoration project, in which we would restore that channel that's over here and buffer it. And within that buffer, put a mini disc golf course on the outer edge of the buffer. So there's not enough area entirely to get a full 18-hole disc golf course. But in talking to Innovo, which is a disc golf course company, there are a lot of different areas that are using mini courses and the holes here and there. And it's a really great intergenerational activity and gives people something to do in that wooded area. And that's definitely something that there was an expressed interest in. The other components on this are just, this future baseball on here is just to show you that long range, that you could fit something in there. It's not laid out the right way and exactly where you want to put it, but I just wanted to illustrate that it can fit in there. That did not come back in this survey as something that was a real high priority right now, but down the road you may want to consider that. So I just wanted to illustrate that could fit. And then access to having additional play and a splash pad. That was something that people really had interest in, was access to some type of water. So those, I believe, I hit on most of the programmatic concepts in there. On concept A, and I don't know if you have any questions about what's in this one. There are similar program features in B. It's the site circulation that's different. So if there are program questions, we can go ahead and talk about that. Is everybody good?
Yeah, I got one question, I
Oh.
think. I don't know if it's a program question, but what's the difference in the number of parking spots between A and B?
So I don't have B in front of me right now, but they're fairly similar. The parking that would be in the back that would get you around the park connection road in A is put here so that you would have access to those back areas. And then these parking spaces would serve the multi-use fields and the splash pad and kind of ninja area on concept B. So they're pretty much the same in numbers, just in different locations.
Yeah.
So in concept B, the primary difference is that roadway, that park roadway connection would not come all the way through in the back, and we're proposing not using and reusing those farm buildings that are in the back of the property right now. We would propose putting the future recreation building up front still in this concept, and then having some kind of market building closer to the road. So that you have access in and out to it more easily. So that's one of the primary differences. We're still proposing coming in that primary park road and having a roundabout to get to the different areas of the park. It just does not come all the way through in the back of the park. Two of the program differences in here are that we were proposing putting a splash pad closer kind of to this area in the multi-purpose fields. And then there's a ninja course in here. A ninja course is like an obstacle course, but it's an intergenerational obstacle course. So it's not like a playground. You could be 4 years old or 80 years old if you wanted to go through the obstacle course. Some of them are timed, some of them aren't. They're a lot of fun. I'm not very good at it, but I tried it and enjoyed it. So those are kind of the difference there, is that you would have some play here, and play in the back, just different types of play. One thing I did not highlight on the other plan, they're in different locations on the two plans, but we would propose separating out the tennis courts and pickleball. So there's 4 pickleball courts proposed over there, the west of this parking area. And then another element that I did not highlight on concept A is the garden that you have down here past the picnic shelter that's really pretty, the native plant garden. With this connection here, we would need to move it. On concept A, we're proposing moving it up closer to town hall so that it's up part of your accessibility playground expansion and the town hall campus centrally located. And on this concept, we're proposing just moving it over adjacent to the access road. So it would stay down in the same area, but it would just shift down a little bit. So those are the primary differences. On this concept, we would put an outdoor classroom, shelter and stage, and that's a multi-purpose shelter building that can be used for all sorts of different things in front of your events lawn area. Another feature of both of them is that having some kind of deck off the back of this building, you've got this phenomenal view right here on your town hall and no access to that. And so we would propose putting some kind of deck off the back of that to really connect your campus to your future park so that it's all one big campus. And then there were a couple of people that came back with a really great idea because of the views you have, is having some kind of observation tower associated with that deck so that you really could orient yourself as an educational tool and where you are north, south, east, and west and different views you have. So that's on both of those concepts. The buffer that we're proposing for the stream restoration does go back along Mills River, and we would work with the group that would do the restoration on making sure that we have the right access locations for getting to and from Mills River. So a few of the comments that we received from the advisory board last night were making sure that we have a continuous trail from put in to take out, because that's going to be a really popular feature, and make sure that that's a primary route. So we're going to look at adjusting that. Another comment that we received last night is making sure that if we don't have a ninja fitness course, that there's some kind of fitness component along the trails somewhere, because that's something that there was an interest in. And there was also another point about making sure there's enough shade structures and picnic shelters for the different areas. So those were our primary comments that we received last night from the board, as far as that they felt like they would like to see added to that consolidated plan. Are there any questions about concept, either of the concepts or the elements within them? Okay.
We don't know what it's gonna cost.
Yeah, we haven't done any cost estimates yet. We're still in the fun part right here.
I was gonna get to that later. So, I know the cost comes from because of the way that the infrastructure that we already have
Mhm.
laid out, and the big part of the property is over here. So, on the B,
Mhm.
so someone could, I guess, the main park entrance would be off 191.
Mhm.
So you could not get to town hall or library from that main.
You would come around this way to get to town hall, and that parking would be still in front of town hall. Would be reconfigured.
Yeah.
So that roadway would need to be improved, which based on the comments that we received on the survey is something that everyone would like to see happen regardless of,
Well, no,
that
we could do
expansion.
anything about that, that's a state road, so
yeah.
that's the main problem I see with that. You know?
Yeah.
And it's not a criticism, it's just, I know that's really.
Yeah.
A few more things let's jot it down, so, and the buffer in here, down on that, falls to prevent some of the states want to require or.
You talking about the buffer along the property line?
This way.
Yes, so that's 100.
Do you want to explain that?
Yeah, well, that's so the 150 feet is if we do a riverbank restoration project. I think most of you know, the river used to cut across the middle of that property, and the previous landowner basically cut a straight line ditch that takes it basically straight down the property line, which they didn't have a permit for, and so there's some concern there that we potentially could even we can get penalized for that. And essentially, there's the only thing we would have to do is correct it in some way. And so for us to correct it, we could either put it back the way it was, or we could look at doing a restoration project that would make it more suitable, which is what we're proposing here, is that 150-foot buffer. The 150-foot buffer, I think for a stream, Jeff probably knows what the actual, like for building, how, like off a or a jurisdictional stream, what the
Well, the thing with natural stream restoration is that because you're introducing all sorts of meanders and bends in this new flood prone width, that's just a placeholder that would accommodate most natural stream types that a designer would try to push through there. You know, it's been channelized, so it's, you know, straight as a gun barrel. Obviously, the restored stream would be very sinuous, so that's just, and I would agree, given my experience, that, you know, that's probably an adequate placeholder that you could work within that area and put in a natural stream that would satisfy the requirements of the regulators and meet the needs of the designer.
So basically, Jeff, that stream won't be able to stay straight, they're gonna have to meander.
Correct. I mean, no stream really, unless it's a waterfall, is gun barrel straight.
I do know when we walked the property, Sandra and Nicole, and when the neighbors in the adjacent homes that was pleased with the way he cleaned that out because it had lowered the water table in the yards. Did they not?
They did.
They come out bragging about that. So they're probably, I know it's state regulated, or I guess, or federally regulated, but they're gonna probably be a little upset when the stream gets away from them a little bit, probably.
But we have a couple of Missouri Village residents here, some that border that property, so I'm sure they'd be happy to. But I think a lot of, we would actually move the stream back from their property line. And I think what they're finding is, yes, it's draining quickly now, but over time, because as you said, it's gun barrel straight, they're going to start to see erosion into their property. And so while right now it's draining very quickly, and so any restoration project, of course, would consider getting water off their property, but we also have to consider the erosion that is going to continue to occur if we don't do something.
I also wanted to just highlight that whatever happens with any kind of stream restoration or buffer, we would want to do something. Because if you're going to invest in recreational resources here with the trail and the field, we want to protect that. So you would want to make sure that you do something to have some kind of buffer, so that you try to reduce any kind of erosion that might happen, for those future recreational resources, and that would help with that.
Yeah, so there'll be trees and stuff planted in there too. That'll help kind of shelter them a little bit to where they aren't just faced with ball fields and people.
That was going to be my next point too, of making sure you have a decent buffer. Because while yes, everybody loves the idea of having a park in their backyard, when there's 9 a.m. soccer games, and you don't have any sort of vegetation, or we end up putting lights on those fields, having some sort of buffer, I think is going to be really important for those neighbors.
The restoration, could you feasibly put disc golf in it though?
There, we measured out in that outer, so if it likely will meander, that we could look at putting it in the different areas that it was meandering out and in and out, and do smaller practice holes, so they wouldn't be, when you do disc golf, a lot of courses have, a 2 and 3 par you have to do, they've got a longer distance. These would be much shorter beginner distances, in those areas where it's meandering. So, and it's permit, we did check to make sure that we could have some kind of natural environmental uses in there, and disc golf and things like that, if there was a restoration in the air allowable.
And we checked specifically for grant funding too, if that would be allowed in certain areas, and it would be. And so I know this is one area, I know me in particular am interested in getting some feedback from you all on, because there is a lot of grant money out for this type of work. But also, we all know how long it takes to get that grant money sometimes. And so, some of the first grant applications are due this spring. And you just got to remember, with any time you do a grant project, grant application, if it's due this spring, wouldn't be awarded till probably late next fall. By the time we sign contract, put things out to bid, you're talking about a year and a half probably before we'd actually see any of that work done. And so if this is something that everybody's interested in, and y'all wanted me to start pursuing grant applications as far as restoration work goes, I think the sooner we can do that too, the better. Just to start to get that work complete.
And that's still putting it a year to a year and a half out.
If we, like, say we were to apply this spring, again, typically the award would be October, November, to know if we even got the grant. And by the time you would do your design work, you would do your bid out your project. I mean, I would think the soonest you would see any of that work done would be a year to 18 months from.
Would that be to go down that ditch line and then to turn around through here where it's green continuous? So it's all one. Okay.
Yeah, I would say the major work is along this ditch line, and most of it is really from the halfway point to where it starts to curve. But just, just like we had back here, a lot of that property line, you just have high banks with eroding ditches. And if we don't do something, that's just going to kind of continue and stay what we were, a few years ago when we did that restoration project.
A question while we're on grants, if that's okay. If we go forth with stairs to go down right here, but then bulldoze it later on, do we have to?
It wouldn't be, that project wouldn't be affected.
Oh, okay.
That would
It's not.
stay, that would stay.
That
And it would
stay.
still connect to this upper parking lot up here, so it would not be affected by.
And that's the case with either concept. We kept that intact because that would really allow that playground area to expand within that space without having to come down here as much. So,
But to answer your question, Nicole, as it, referring to the stream restoration, I'm very interested in pursuing grants for a simple fact. This is probably like a $500,000 project, and I think the town taxpayers be much happier to see that $500,000 go into recreation if we can find somebody to help us with the burden of doing the restoration, even if it does take a long time. But it's just going to be a tremendous expense.
Does anyone have any more questions about the program areas within the concept?
I'm a little bit concerned about how many parking spots we have in front of town hall on either concept,
Mm-hmm.
especially with the playground staying where it is. It seems like that has shrunk down a little bit or tremendously. I can't really tell by the lines. I even took time to count them, but
Yeah, so that parking has decreased and we've added parking down here at the shelter area, but that area has decreased.
okay. Because we got to think about, we got library in there right now. We got town hall functions going on regularly. And I just see that being the main access point for a lot of parents and children to access the playground still.
Mhm. And we can look at reconfiguring that and adding some of that back. There's room with your parking now to use that footprint.
What about if we, I mean, and I know this is your deal, you'll figure it out, but my common sense idea is be to keep what we've got to the breaking point where it breaks over
Mm-hmm.
and maybe do away with that
Yeah,
and then still figure out how to get the circle in there to keep everybody flowing. It gets up there and realize that's not where they want to be.
right.
Instead of having to come up here and do a
Just
6-point turn and go
right.
out. Yeah. Even on big meeting nights here, people would be forced to go to one of the other lots and hike in here.
Mhm.
And I just want to make sure we think about all that.
Which is a good segue into the conversation of the buildings in general. One thing to keep it back in your mind as we're having these conversations is we're out of space in terms of town services. We're at capacity. We've got an employee working out of a supply closet right now. And we're programming more activities and filling up the space that we do have. So one of the things that we've talked a little bit about is, do we look at building a new town hall on our broader campus here? Do we look off-site? Do we leave the library in this building and then, or do we leave Parks and Recreation in this building and build a new structure somewhere else? So there's a lot of scenarios there that it's important to have in the back of your mind as we talk about this, because obviously those are long-term projects, but they do have some implications as far as the overall site plan that we're looking at right now.
That what future building is labeled like that you're.
That's
That's
right now it's a recreation building.
potentially a gym building.
I noticed on both these maps, the dairy part down there, not the shed, but the dairy part down there's gone. So are they just gonna tear that down?
That's what we've discussed. I'll let Sarah jump in a little bit more on the accessibility component of that, but they're functional for what they've been used for. They're not great in terms of public access. They're not on sewer, they're on septic over there. And they're in a very awkward location to try to use as a permanent structure. And so in this first concept A, we're looking at keeping the shed. So assuming, of course, it's structurally sound and we can use it, but doing away with the other existing buildings. And then the other plan showing no buildings back there, moving the market up to the front of the property. And Sarah, do you want to add anything about the
I
public
just think it's
accessibility
the
component?
use. So the uses that the community expressed wanting to have were gymnasium, community gathering space, active recreation indoor space, and the way that those are configured, that they don't meet those needs spatially or dimensionally. So they would have to be retrofitted. And what we don't have back yet is the information on what would need to happen, but the bathrooms don't need public use. They're not accessible right now. And the buildings themselves would have to change, and there would potentially be some health safety issues as far as fire and things like that. So there would be a lot of upfitting of structures that don't really meet what you need them to be to begin with. And so it's going to be that balance once we get that information back of do you do that for something that doesn't spatially meet your needs, recreationally, for programming?
Just as a, like just doing the initial walkthrough with the engineer for that building, so in the actual dairy structure, literally it's just open, long, big and straight, and there's no cross sections. So even that big, long, open space, you would have to, he said one thing for sure, you would have to build cross walls to support the building. So you're already taking a very long, skinny space, now you have to cut it with support walls. So there's just a lot of those sort of things that is perfectly acceptable for agriculture use, but when it comes to a public facility, I mean, he literally said, we had a bad hurricane come through, it would not be the building standards to be able to hold up to that kind of wind without those emission supports. And so all that information is back from him, but there's definitely a lot of concerns about what it would take to make it a publicly accessible building.
So we're not gonna do any updates on the lawn building yet, not the shed, but the lawn building. Till we figure all that, well, if it's gonna be tore down, we wouldn't do any work. Because I know the other day when I was up here, there was electricians in there working, and I think they said they'd bought a door that they put up on
Well,
there.
that's, at this point, we just are trying to secure the building. We had to do, I mean, again, because it was used for agriculture. So when we had to switch power over to Duke, Duke would not grant us power because it didn't meet the standards, because it's no longer in agriculture use. So we had to just get like the electrician did literally the minimum we had to do just to be able to function power in that building. And then the only other thing we're looking to do is get that garage door so we can secure the building. I mean, people, animals, otherwise, could do who knows. So we're trying not to spend a lot of money on that building, but doing the minimum we have to just secure it.
Yeah.
Because we're not going to tear it down tomorrow. We know it's going to be there for at least a little while, and
Okay.
make sure it's secure. So.
But I'm in favor of keeping town hall here, and if there is a relocation, looking at a new home for library on this expanded property. And also, I'm hoping that maybe the maintenance building can be repurposed to be town staff, whether it's planning and zoning over there. And I'm assuming that the placeholder for maintenance would include um, housing or office space for parks and recreation too. So, so my hope would be that, three things could happen. One, library might have a new home somewhere at the future building or where the box is for the market. And then maybe we can have staff and repurpose the maintenance building. And then also maintenance would be moving to a new building at the edge of the property over there. So that might free up some space to make this building meet the town's needs as a town hall for at least another decade or so.
I know it's kind of in the way, but for the next 10, 15 years, is there any way to use the newer building back here for maintenance? Or is it just, or we just don't know yet because of the engineer? Because we know, I mean, as we talk, we're almost thinking we're going to do this in the next 4 or 5 years, but realistically, we're planning something for 30, 40, 50 years time it's all fulfilled, more than likely.
The barn building?
Yeah, back here, the newer barn building, the 2-story part.
We did not look at that for feasibility of park maintenance. That ideally, that would probably be the least functional space for it, because you're bringing then all of your park maintenance in out to your primary part of your park back on the floodplain. So if we were that wouldn't be a typical place.
Okay.
Just because if they have to bring like a load of mulch in, or they've got to bring dirt in for baseball or soil, it would all have to go in and out of the park.
I gotcha.
So it can damage your roads over the long run. That's why it's great to have it on the exterior of the road.
In the immediate term, as long as the building is safe, I mean, we're already storing some stuff
That's
over
what I
there.
figured. Yeah.
And so it'll kind of act as overflow for current park needs.
Yeah, I could see us getting by for several years out of there with our tractors and our mowers and all that stuff, with just a little bit of upfit.
You make a good point, though, is that, you know, this will be phased. So once we understand what everybody wants and we get all the ideas incorporated and our plan consolidated, it's just like the other side that you've used and developed over time. It will be the same approach.
Right.
What are the priorities? What makes sense for infrastructure? And that balancing out and phasing the priorities. So, you know, there may be some things that you use in the short term that then come offline in the long term.
Mhm.
So, so just touching on the phasing part, so now, well, I've got in my mind what would go on first, but you tell me, where do you start? So this is your, at the end of the day, whenever all this is done, it's your, it's really good. So where do you start?
Well, I think once, I don't want to answer that until we know what we're going to put in it.
Well,
Right.
you're,
We generally know what we're going to put in it, but usually we start with infrastructure,
right.
which is not the pretty part. Nobody wants to spend money on roads, but it's
Well-
really one of the most important parts because it gives you access to the entire site. So you could have access to the entire site and then phase development around that. But that infrastructure piece is really
Well,
important.
that's kind of what I was thinking. I mean, you've got to know where your road is.
Right.
And where your parking areas are going. How to build around that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just to further that question a little bit too, the other part I see is very important is doing that riverbank restoration part, and back to the riverbank. Especially, I mean, one, just before we put in any infrastructure, we want to make sure we know where any new flood lines would be, any of that work would be done. And I think the sooner we can start growing the buffer, because you can only grow trees so fast, any sooner we can start growing that buffer as we develop the other pieces that have our neighbors in Mills River Village will be.
So because of cross goods, and Jeff probably can answer this.
Right here, Andy.
But it shows up in both of the plans, but there was thought, maybe I was just thinking that we could close that ditch off with Dickie String.
It cannot be closed off. I believe when it's all said and done, it's going to be considered jurisdictional wetlands. And so, I mean, of course,
But
with
you haven't got the answer.
not definitely, but I have met with the quarry person that walked the site. So why we don't have the official river stamp, she felt pretty confident that that was going to be jurisdictional wetlands.
Even though it's that it costs greater than that.
Yep.
There's one other big aspect to this too that I think in planning needs to be thought about. And I'm meeting with DOT in the next week or two, but all the water from the other side of 191 is going to get dumped out somewhere approximately where this exit only sign is poked in. Big, massive culvert coming, and everything from the other side of the road is going to end up going through there when the new road's built. So he's supposed to meet me and let me know if there's still going to be enough room to get access in and out of there.
And that ditch down through there's been that straight for 60 years
Mhm.
or longer. I mean, it wasn't something that was just done.
I think that's one of the things that makes this conversation more important on the far east side that's not paved right now. To make sure there's more egress and egress out of sight over there. As we bring more onto here, we want to make sure there's other ways for people to get in and out. It makes that much more important. It hasn't needed to be a priority because you have the primary road, but with bringing that additional acreage online, that other access becomes.
We've worked on trying to get that paved for many, many years. It's not going to happen anytime soon unless we have a change in ownership, I would say.
A question I had for Sarah was, I'm a big fan of the loop road that you had on concept A, and it doesn't appear on concept B, and the biggest difference just on appearance is that the location of the market. But I'd like to see that loop road appear on the final concept, whether the market's up by the highway or if it's back on the town's property. I just, for the simple fact, it does create a loop and it gives people two options, two way of coming in and out, and it takes pressure off the primary entrance of concept B. So unless there's something that you is just
No, I think
is a
that's
big foul with,
a good way to get people in and out. I think that was the same discussion last night. There was, I think, consensus from the board that that was the preferred alternative. Because it got people into the park, but it also protected the middle part of the park without vehicles going through it. So it helped support taking the vehicles out of the middle, really connect the new acreage. The other comment I wanted to make when you brought up the NCDOT and grading and everything is we will make sure that there's connections to the future green. So I think I got those plans in PDF form, and we'll just make sure that that greenway, whatever happens to the greenway internally, the park connects to the future multi-use trail along.
I don't think we want to see people have to drive with the road just to get to the library at all. And the plan, we would. Plan.
Well, that sort of segues into what I was going to ask you guys to do next. I wanted to get an understanding of what you like from each concept. So you have sticky notes in front of you. There's a green sticky note. And I'd love to know what you like about concept A. And I have a board in the back. I can turn on and collect them. Or you can get up and put them on the board. But I would like to get an understanding of the elements you like in concept A. And then the purple one is what you like in concept B. And then we can put them in the back. And we'll take that. Again, our goal is not to have to pick one or the other, but the things we like within each of them.
it's your,
Well, I think the comment that we received was that there's all this phenomenal mountain biking around, but there's not really a great place to learn. And so that would be what that area would be for, is to go back and practice skills and learn and have access to that so that you can potentially use all the other resources.
What's a bike
I'm
plaza?
sorry, but if members of the audience have questions or comments, if you could come to the microphone, because the people listening are only hearing the answers.
Sorry, it's more. So the question was, what's the difference between the bike plaza and the bike skills area? And the bike plaza is a multi-purpose paved area that you could use for rollerblading or skateboarding or biking or that kind of thing. The skills area is something that came up in the input, which was people wanted to have access to more of a beginner learning mountain biking setup. So it'd be a pump track and skills practice area for someone to really learn how to mountain bike, to use the greater resources in your region.
That's gonna be like yours. Jumps and stuff.
So I can collect if anybody has their concept A on the green and concept B in the purple. I can take those up if you want.
While those are being collected, can I make a comment?
Absolutely.
Okay, I don't know the rules.
That's okay.
So we are one of those neighbors that Nicole referenced that lives in Mills River Village, right along where the stream remediation would happen. And just to validate what was said, whether it was done correctly or not, the new big ditch that we have did solve the water problems on that whole side of the neighborhood. And so I think the assurance that folks that live along there are going to really want to have is that, I mean, I'm all for making it not a ugly ditch that has standing water in it that encourages mosquitoes and all kinds of other issues. But what will happen to the water along all those properties? Are we still going to be able to have it drain into this new stream? I think that's going to be one of the big questions that will come up is what are homeowners going to do with the water? You know, they're going to be prohibited from it draining there. Yeah, because most of the houses there, the water drains straight into that ditch from their yards.
Yeah. As we walked it, we noticed all the 4-inch corrugated and 6-inch corrugated pipes dumping directly into that. Jeff, I don't know, is that even going to be permitted by the state on the new stream?
Well, the source of funding will have a biggest say-so in all that. And it's one of those design concepts where natural stream restoration really doesn't take into account of trying to accommodate existing infrastructure. I mean, it's trying to create a self-forming, self-maintaining stream that Mother Nature would put in on its own. But it's not to say that two can't coincide at the same time. But again, it come down to a design priority, and then whether it's the town funding it or if it's a state or federal organization that's funding it, they would have say-so on about what measures could be taken to accommodate off-site drainage into this
Okay.
restoration.
Can I get your name for the record?
Jeff Porter. I would just ask that be taken into consideration. Understand wanting a grant to pay for it.
Right.
But if the grant means that everyone that lives along there suddenly has a flooded yard when we get half an inch of rain, that will be problematic. And then the other comment is on concept B. Concept A is preferable because of the parking. In concept B, the parking along the new multi-use fields. If you have property that's bordering that, I know there'll be some trees as a buffer, but the less cars that are over there, the less noise. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Answer your question, Shannon. Usually direct discharge is frowned upon, so
I figured.
it would have to be more having it slope down stream.
Sorry, that raises a follow-up question then. Would that be on the homeowner? Who would be responsible then for
We've never
making that possible?
we've never got into any of this before ourselves. I'm sure the problem is going to lie. That's why I asked if this thing was going to be meandering, because there'll be times it's over next to some of y'all, and then there's going to be times it's going to start getting back away from y'all. The reason for the 100 to 150 foot, so they can work it down through there. And I see why they want to do that, so it don't run so fast. But I do know as we walk down through there, almost every neighbor come out and says, "Y'all ain't thinking about redoing that again, are you? That's working." So, you know, I wasn't actually expecting them to say that.
Yeah.
I was actually expecting them to say, you know, you've opened all this up, you know, now we're seeing just the old barns and stuff, but they didn't. They was very pleased with that. Right?
They've been cleaning ditches out for years. That will makes it dry.
Yeah. But we got an issue with it, so we're
Okay.
gonna have to address it. We'll just have to ask all these questions when we get into it.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess does it matter where the property line's at? Like is the property line the center of the ditch or?
Yeah, it's pretty much down through there. It is.
Yeah, the property line for the most part throughout that ditch. There are some times where it's completely on town property. But for the most part, it's basically that ditch line is. straight is straight on there. But also, I mean, the whole street, like, if you did a restoration project, the whole stream would move over on town property. It would all move farther away from the houses, not closer.
Well, that would pretty much stop any drainage from over there coming over into it, wouldn't it? Where they've got drains coming into the creek now, going down through there, if we move the creek over into completely town property, I know you can legally disperse what they call gray water, but would they still be allowed to do that on town property?
That's,
The drains would end at the property line. And if they were worried about positive drainage having it flow into that remediated creek, we would have to address that by having the slope appropriately so the water would naturally flow overground.
I'm just wanting to find out so we kind of know what the picture's gonna look like.
Yeah.
These are good questions too that we can pose back to the grant organization and let them know what the concerns are so that we get some feedback.
yeah, there's always the option too. It's a little bit out of order, and typically you like your design work to be paid for with the grant money. But if there's a lot more of these considerations that want to be taking place, we can always, the town can choose to pay for the design work that takes in those considerations. And then with that design, we can figure out what grants we might apply for. So that's just something to consider as we go through this process too. Typically, the grant funds would pay for the design work, but if we want to make sure we're meeting the standards, you can always design it first, make sure it meets our homeowners' needs, and then figure out tweaks we need or concessions need to be made for the grant applications.
So right now you're looking at it for wetlands, or what are you looking at?
As far as grants,
Mm-hmm.
Riverbank restoration.
Riverbank restoration.
It's very similar to what we did. So I mean, there's tons of different
Right,
options out there.
okay,
Depending on the grant source, all the requirements are different. What would be required.
okay.
If I'm thinking right, it's, there's not a whole lot of these, restoration designers, engineers out there right now.
No, there's quite a few in
They
this
are?
area, yes.
Okay.
And for my own clarification, just to make sure I understand, since I wasn't privy to the conversation with the Army Corps of Engineers, but basically the ditch as it is today will not stand. They will not allow that. Either we have to put it back where it was, which is cutting right through the middle of the park, or
That's what I understand.
restore it to a natural stream type in that footprint that's on that plan.
So that's for the curved part right here, correct?
What Jeff was clarifying was the options appear to be either we put the stream back in through the ditch where it was prior to it being graded out to the river, or we restore the entire reach of that stream from the river up to the town's property line. Is that what you're verifying, Jeff?
Well, just a simple fact that everybody's happy with the ditch as a way to, or a creek the way it is now, but except for
The Army
U.S. Corps of Engineer and DEQ.
Corps. Mhm.
And so something's going to have to give. I mean, we're either
Right.
going to have to put it back where it was or restore it in its current location.
That's right.
The thing that I also would like to point out too is if we put it back where it was and it becomes a stream, then there's buffer. Remember the conversation that we had with the concepts was there's buffer implications there. So right now with the jurisdictional wetlands, we're able to not have that big offset. If that stream were to have to go back to the middle of the property, it would be considered a stream. We would have to have buffers on that stream. So
Is that a hundred?
Yeah.
It's size?
No.
I don't think it's quite that far, but it is, I think it's what, 30 feet? Yeah. And then, so you're losing a lot of this. It's basically instead of losing the buffer here, you're losing it in the middle. If this would be considered a stream.
But if we went back that way, they're gonna make us fill all that other back in, correct? Or no?
That was originally wetlands too. I would imagine they would just let it dry up, and that would become wetlands again. I would really.
they say it's habitat, then you can't destroy habitat. Not without mitigation.
What we got to realize though, I'm telling you, we got to realize that if they're going to put a 7x7 culvert or 8x8 or 10x10 right up here, they're planning on that much water coming through there at times.
Well, it's gonna come down by the other intersection down here too.
And it's going to go straight through the middle of this park. Right, straight down that blue line right there. Right by, yeah. Right. Yeah. They're talking about putting a humongous one right there where that exit only. And all the water from all the way back from Van Winkler is going to get sloped back this way. And then from the River Oaks back this way, all that's going back to that one big culvert. And that's going, and if we don't send it on through there, guess where it's coming? It's coming this way, and it's going to flood all of this. And you already have issues with it.
So, I'm close to that, but not. Are we being a little bit short-sighted to not put the other piece of property we would really like on the front of 191 in our plan? Like the Hefner piece where they just tore the house down? Because like we're putting, what I see, we're putting traffic onto Hooper Lane, which sounds like there's a lower probability of getting Hooper Lane paved than there is owning a Taj Mahal entrance. If that makes sense.
You're probably right. But, you know, as us talking tonight, we don't even know if it's even going to be for sale. Yeah.
Yeah, where they just tore the house down.
Yeah.
I'm just asking, is the entrance and the push towards Hooper Lane where it's unpaved solely because of the whatever the small entrance that we have?
Mhm.
So I think whether it's over there or where that exit only is, we need to look at long range access to that site from a loading standpoint, because if you want to have events, you want to have multi-purpose fields, you want to have people in there, there's got to be circulation for them to get out. And so that's why the push for the Hooper Lane is that if we can't do the exit only, there's got to be another alternative off the site.
I'm saying if we pursued it, if hypothetically it was for sale, then should we not force it to go out onto our new 5-lane that's coming?
Yeah,
You can go get your green sticky note back and write it on that. Your desire.
You can take it back. I won't.
I've got another question.
Okay.
No, we're still on the good ones, right?
Yeah, we're good. Well, no,
I got time.
So that's the next one on the concepts A and concepts B.
Sandra,
Yeah, I've got another question. With the road coming through there and then putting that big water culvert system in, can we not have the state do something to run that water through to get it, because it's going to the river is where it's going. Can we not have them put in something, whether it's a concrete thing to get the water down through there so it don't come out and flood us here?
well, I don't know. I mean, I'm meeting with him, and he said he would look at it, and he might have to have how'd you say that word, hydrologist do the design work on what would come through there with an inch of rain, 2 inches of rain, 5 inches of rain, so on, so we could get a feel for what we're going to need for culverts on down the line. Because what you would think you need is not going to be near enough. I mean, he even said that. You know, you'd never, and we've got to think that if we put anything on the other side of that, that ditch is going to have to, have fall down through there. So our sewer lines, our water lines, everything has got to be, we can't just drop our sewer down because we got to get back to a pump station or something.
But are they not responsible for the runoff water from the road?
I'm not real sure. I doubt it.
I'm sure they are.
It
Well,
stops
they
at their right away,
yeah, they're just to the edge
unless
of
we
right
have
of way.
stormwater regulations.
They can run water off, and if they're right away, it don't matter where you
Yes,
Yep.
that's exactly like on our.
Can I weigh in on this?
Yes, we got a professional.
Wow, that's very kind. Can I get that in writing?
Yes, sir.
Neither my wife nor my
Which
cat
color
will
you
believe
want it
that. My experience with the DOT, we used to say, water runs downhill, you have to deal with the water that you get. And that's fine, as long as that water is following its natural course. But once that course is changed and it's concentrated and then spilled off on someone, you have to have a drainage easement. Now, I'm sure that the DOT's looked into that. They probably have their ideas, but the adjoining property owners have to sign off on that drainage easement or it is taken. And there should be some room to work with that. Now, if I understand it, those pieces of property have not been totally taken by the state yet, just only portions of them, correct?
Mhm.
So there's a portion of remaining property there. And yeah, I agree. If there was a way to acquire that property, for fair, that would be definitely beneficial. But those property owners that are going to receive that water, something's got to be done for them.
That's
You can't, state can't just flood you out by changing the course of that water.
get.
That's my opinion for what it's worth. But that's my experience. When we put a new pipe in, we had to deal with the property owner and make sure if it's an existing pipe or an existing ditch or existing whatever, then.
well, that might be our issue though, because Sandra, there's already a culvert there, correct?
But it's
they're just-
substantially larger.
There, well,
Well, don't be in a whole separate place though, because the road does completely off the road field, so they're putting in a whole culvert.
but it still aligns, is what I was told. The alignment will be the same. It's just moving this way.
That may be.
He said
But
that's
they
where.
should work with us.
Okay.
I mean, we're a municipality.
Okay.
We're a large property owner.
Okay.
We've got valuable things that we need to protect.
Okay.
And there should be a way to work and find something that's some compromise. On another note, I like the stream buffer idea. I do. I like the idea, keeping it for the neighbors, not, and I think there might be a way that anything would be corrected as part of the grant. And that's one of the reasons we're getting a grant is to correct it. Well, we correct all the issues with that work, and getting some trees over that stream will help the temperature. It'll help the trout,
Oh, yeah.
lowering that water temperature.
Sure.
So I think that's a great thing.
Okay. Thank you, Jim.
And it is just a stream
Mm,
until it rains.
Right.
And that's when it's a problem.
mhm. Yes, ma'am. If you would give us your name and
My name's Liz Cook.
thank you.
I studied engineering and stream restoration. So, side note, I haven't practiced it in a really long time. I'm also a physical therapist. That's mostly what I've been practicing. Usually if a DOT messes with a stream and completely destroys it basically because there's too much water, they have to do something to fix it. It becomes part of their issue too. So if they are going to put so much water in that it floods the wetlands too much, where it's going to destroy that habitat, then that has to be in their planning too. And it's probably something that hasn't been added to their you need to think about this list.
Well, I may be wrong in thinking this, but I think maybe that's why they're bringing the water more this way to keep it out of, you see from the exit only, if you move up the screen and to the left, the blue line right here,
Mhm.
I think that's why they're dodging that by bringing the wastewater, the stormwater back down this way to put it in just a natural ditch to keep it out of that same ditch that needs the buffer.
Yeah, but if they put too much in that,
Okay.
then it does damage to it,
Okay.
then that still becomes their problem.
Okay.
They'd be running it uphill too.
Well,
'Cause there's an hole right there.
let's see, they're going to cut all that down. That's what I was told.
They're gonna fill me up 6 feet.
Mhm.
But you have to assume that the property in question, he has already settled with the state. So what's done is done.
I guess. I don't know. I
They're
have
not
no
finished.
When you talk to him?
They're not finished yet.
Oh.
They're still going forward.
Okay. So we'll get back on track here. I just want to make everybody aware if something major don't happen, you know, we're not dealing with 2 or 3 foot size culverts down there. We're dealing with, if there's a 10 by 10 upstream, it's going to have to be a major one downstream because that's a longer field than it looks like. And it's going to pick up a lot of surface water into these ditches. So we just need to make sure we keep that in mind.
So we need to circle back with drainage
Mhm.
and access
Yeah.
and the future roadway topography so that we can do both of those things.
And the reason I bring this up is if the one going down between the event lawn and down there we've got a shelter, a restroom shelter on both of them's designed over here. If that big ditch and all that's through there, chances are we would have to put another pump station on this side eventually to get that sewage water back up to the road. Where now it would probably drain back over to our existing pump station and come up the same line.
That's the hope.
That would be the hope. But I'm thinking if we can't redivert all this water at some point, that ditch is going to have to be majorly deep, and we're going to have to keep that in mind.
Could they do it in a big culvert?
I don't know that you could run that much water that far. It's so far in and keep it. I mean, anything's possible, but Lord knows tell them what that would cost.
Well, I don't know. I'm just trying to
Yeah,
think
exactly.
of options.
If we could take a minute and think about the things that you'd like to change on either one of these concepts that would help us when we go back to consolidating the 2 plans. There's sticky notes in front of you, and there's a pink one and a blue one. If you could let us know on concept A what you would like to change. The pink one, and the blue one, what you would like to change on concept B. And then once you have all that up on the board, I'll just make sure we've got what everyone wants us to consider. Get all the ideas.
As a group, as council, is everybody pretty much on consensus that we wouldn't be very entertained in going back out onto Hooper and come back in? Is that where in the near? I mean, anytime in the near future, would we?
Go back out on the just
Yeah.
that's just
I mean, I think anybody else got anything to weigh on that? Are we overlooking something?
Well, I drive my tractor on it, but it's so bumpy I don't drive my car on it.
Mhm.
So if there's truly no way we can get that page in between the two, I think we're doing a huge disservice.
Yeah.
Well, also, if they have anything happen on Boylston Highway, that's one way they reroute traffic.
Mhm. Yes. Okay.
So with the pink one, I want to know what you'd like to. With the pink one, I want to know what you would like to do. What you would like to change on concept A, and then the blue one is what you would like to see changed on concept B. And then I'll read through what you guys like and what you would like to change, so that we make sure we've got everyone's ideas considered as we refine the plans. Does anyone have theirs that you'd like me to take up?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Is these the ones, Jeff, are these the ones that you would like to change on concept?
No, that one, that's a late submittal.
Okay. Those are the ones you like?
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone else have any they'd like me to? Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to read over these just to make sure we've got everyone's ideas on the things that you like on concept A. I think there's consensus on the loop road, having that access. See that on several of these. The splash pad location is liked on concept A, and the event lawn configuration on concept A. There's a preference for having that parking closer to the river and parking access with town hall with concept A, making sure that there's shade and buffer. There shelters, the future building site, the shelter and stage, and the multi-use trails are all lights on concept A. And the road connectivity, market in the shed, and the events lawn. So those are all things that came back as things that you like on concept A. On concept B, the market location is preferred. On the garden location is preferred on concept B. On these comments, the splash pad, the observation tower, and the outdoor classroom. And that it seems easier to phase. Concept B seems easier to phase, and that there's less traffic by the play area. The things that you would like to change with concept A, not using Hooper Lane, moving the splash pad, move the bike plaza to the northern portion of the property, relocate the garden to the existing location, place market near the highway, no Hooper Lane access. So those were comments on concept A, and making sure that there's adequate parking at town hall. On concept B is the things that you don't like are pushing the traffic to Hooper Lane, keep the center drive and don't divert to Hooper Lane, move the Ninja Fitness to the play area near the tennis courts, and add the loop road. And no parking between stream and soccer field. So making sure that that parking is not near the neighbors was what we're hearing. So those were all of the comments that we have up here that we'll consider. It seems like everybody is in strong support of that road. And it seems like there's strong support to avoid Hooper Lane connection. So we'll need to circle back and see if there's another way that we can, how that exit might work as it relates to DOT's plans and drainage, and if there's an opportunity to do that. One of the things I want to circle, well, there's two things I want to circle back on because they're large use areas and functional questions. And so you have 2 dots, and then your homework's done, and we'll have to come back with solutions that consider all of this input. There's 2 multi-purpose fields proposed, and I just want to make sure there's support for that because they take up a large area. The reason there are 2 proposed is that it came back as something that your residents would like to see happen. You have multi-purpose fields over there, but they're not full size right now. So you definitely need the 1 field on the other side, and to consider your long-term use, you would want to make sure you include 2. So that's the reason there's 2 included. But because it takes up the space, I just want to make sure you support that use. So you have two dots. I have a yes and a no, and you can put those up here, and then I'll highlight the other one that I want to get feedback on because that's a fundamental question on how we put the building in the site circulation, and that's the farmers market. Do you have a preference? And you may not have a preference, but if you have a preference on whether that farmers market's in the back or whether the farmers market's in the front, I'd like to get some feedback on that as well. So you have two dots on there. And if you want to come up and just put yes or no, front or back on those, that will help guide us a little bit. And if it's split evenly, we can talk about it further.
I just want to make sure on the soccer fields, everybody understands that one of those soccer fields is basically equivalent to what is existing.
Right.
So even though we have 3 fields, they're smaller sized. So you could essentially fit those 3 fields and play 3 simultaneous games on one of those fields, essentially. So one of those fields would basically just replace what is existing if you want to look at that room for expansion of soccer in the community. That's why we're looking at the 2 events. That's where our movies would be. I would not. Soccer is very, very hard on. If you've walked in our field here, you will see how badly it affects the turf. And so to have that safe space for people to, just to have a walking event, we won't have any grass. So we want to be able to have our event space where we can maintain that grass, maintain the green space. And then soccer fields, ultimately, we'd have to make that decision whether we would want them to be turf soccer fields, artificial turf, or grass soccer fields. And the difference we would have with new soccer fields, these were not designed to be soccer fields. We took that open space and we made them into soccer fields. And we don't have proper drainage. We don't have the ability to water if we need to try to grow grass, all those things. So as we are more conscientious in our design, we would make sure we have proper drainage and all those things that would help us be able to better maintain soccer fields, whereas an event lawn would be different.
On this event lawn, it's humongous. We could put every citizen in Mills River in that event lawn. And that's not a bad thing, but we're probably not, yeah, we ain't got enough place to park them. So I'm assuming that would be for some expansion also. Because I mean, it's humongous, is it not? If them 2 soccer fields are to scale, you could get 3 soccer fields in that easy. I'm not saying I want soccer fields in there. I'm just trying to get it as a comparison. That is humongous area that I feel like we might not be getting the best use out of in 50 years from now.
It would accommodate about one and a half soccer fields. So we looked at just from a scale standpoint, so you would understand what's in there. And that space is versatile for you for 2 reasons. One, there's this really strong desire to have access to open space because right now in the park, everything's programmed. So when you come out here on a Saturday, outside of that meadow area, it's active use, or even after in the evenings. So that gives you versatility for different programs, or just general open play. It does also help you for long range planning if you ever want to do anything in there. But I would say it's really important to maintain some kind of unprogrammed open space in there.
Okay.
So I wrote down a question about that in your professionalism. What is the appropriate acreage for an event lawn? Like what is? Because I'm with you. This is huge.
Well, so we're looking at it long range planning. So you're going to have movies out here. You talked about wanting to have music events out here. You've also talked about wanting to have sporting events out here. And so with sporting events comes the support of having warm-up areas and having staging areas and having, if you have a 5K race out here, you're going to have places to start. If you're going to have a 5K, anything like that, you're going to need to have comparable acreage to at least a soccer field. So we could reduce the size of that open space.
I'm not asking to reduce it. I'm just asking if there's like some formula that says X number of residents should equal an
It's
acre.
not really a residence thing, it's more of how you talked about wanting to use that space. So it was more about like the special events that were desired to be out here, and making sure there was enough for everybody to be in one place for a special event.
It's hard to overstate the value of that space. I mean, it might be hard to conceptualize now, but some of the most successful parks in the country, they have a large lawn that you can go and throw a picnic down and throw a frisbee, hang out with your family. That doesn't exist right now in Mills River.
Just,
Park down there. There's so many people here, you know, it's really amazing.
Mhm.
A space like that would be awesome.
Are we not concerned that the distance to be traveled from, say, either market location or the uh, big this big event lawn to the restroom facility? We've got one located over here next to the soccer parking, but if you're at the market, you're about going to have to go over to the other one, I guess, over to the other shelter, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so that
Okay.
was one of the things we talked about last night, was making sure that once we get these program elements, is that we put those restrooms in those high use
Okay.
areas. So once we put these together, we're gonna make sure that we've got restroom close to market, restroom close
Okay.
to soccer, and the restroom down in the front that we're showing kind of close to the tennis and pickleball area.
Okay.
The restrooms that are already down there, behind the shed down here, are they not sufficient to serve for that area down there?
Well, they're not ADA acceptable. They're not handicap accessible or any of that, and they are on septic, I would assume.
They're on septic, and there's concern that that loading wouldn't meet public use. So,
I don't know that we can afford them bathrooms.
They're expensive.
I mean, porta potties would be great.
I just have a question about the current soccer fields where it says the future baseball. Was that just showing the size and that you could put a baseball field? And I'm just asking because of the yes, no, the two new fields, there would still be those existing fields that could be used for soccer, or are they going away? I don't have a preference. I was just curious.
Ideally, in the long term, we would move, again, these were not made to be soccer
Yeah.
fields. We use an open field for soccer, and they're incredibly difficult to maintain a good quality. So ideally, what we would do is build those new soccer fields. All soccer would move to that new
Okay.
section, and those would no longer be in use
Okay.
for soccer.
But so we would or wouldn't put a baseball field there?
We could eventually.
Could eventually,
Hmm.
or it could be used for something else either. Well, but to go back to Daniel's statement, eventually, when we built this building, all my predecessors and me along with it, we figured this building to be a 50-year building. I mean, it's not going to, we're not going to make it. I mean, we're going to outgrow it. We never did foresee that. We're already outgrown it. So we need to, I think, make sure we save us somewhere for another building, or save enough room around this one to make her bigger. We need to do something. If we come in and turn in off of Hooper Lane into that, if it ever got paved, wouldn't be too bad. But we can still access it somehow and stay on us if we end up with a building there. Another thing to keep in mind, everything we've got here, road-wise, building-wise, everything is engineered. There's nothing on natural dirt. It's all, it's river bottom. There's rocks everywhere once you get that far under it. And the people that mowed these fields the first year, Sue will tell you, they hated life because they stayed off the lawnmower picking up rocks. Every one of them had 2 5-gallon buckets. You remember that, Sue?
Hmm.
Yeah, they hated life. They hated to come here and mow. And we're going to go through a whole lot more of that as we develop, trying to get it ready.
So if we hate the soccer field, what would it be? If we go up there and put no on a multi-purpose field,
I bet. Well, I think
There's
that's why
there's
we're
only
here
one
to have
answer
the,
that.
I mean, that's why we're here to have that discussion. If we don't want to take up that much space for soccer, then I think we continue going down the list of other elements that maybe didn't make it in.
Well, I think
Or,
yeah, I would personally be on the other side of that, where if you didn't do that, then how much space are we wasting for open space? I mean, we bought property, we need to use it.
The way it lays here, we have an organized space that we're using, baseball field and the soccer field, right? Now, so if we took those soccer fields away, new ones, we would still be stuck with kids wanting to play soccer here in Mill River on an area that is not designed for soccer. That's giving problems. So I think no matter what you do, you still have to find space on that piece of property for some sort of organized activity, soccer, multi-purpose field.
Yeah. And it seems,
That's probably, even on the concept, that probably at least 10 event lawn out there, and even bigger than that on B hits. Business space that could be used for something else at some point.
if we needed it.
That's just a lot of grass.
Don't hurt to leave space for later on to grow, because future councils may have different
Exactly.
plans.
Exactly.
Water. I'm sure this plan comes nowhere close to the 24% impervious coverage limit, but it will have a lot of grass unless we want to build engineered stormwater.
Right. And there's just nothing wrong with wide open spaces.
well, and I think that came through on our public survey too. I mean, when you look at what people want, they want to see green. They want to come here and see nature. They,
I can tell you from personal experience from my place right here, the predator birds around there. I've got falcons, I've got red-tailed hawks, we've had bald eagles, all of them have landed. Blue herrings have landed in my pasture. And there's a crazy white bird that got blown in here from a hurricane that gets in there and walks around. So, they're up towards the front of the property too. And it's because they hunt these fields over here by Van Waverden's and back through here and all of them.
Was there any consideration given to flip-flopping the event lawn and the fields?
I think, I mean, just from my standpoint, typically you want your event lawn as your center. That's the hub of your facility. I understand from your standpoint,
Well, just, if it's too big, then you have more fields and maybe a smaller event lawn. So I just was curious if that had been considered of flipping those two.
We did look at that space, but then the space on the east is very small, and the access would be an issue. We don't want to. That baseball field is beautiful and new, so there was discussion at the last company making sure we can try and keep some of our existing recreational resources that are functioning really well.
Well, I meant the proposed new fields,
this
new soccer fields with the event lawn, flip-flopping those.
Property, when kind of future expansion would be ideal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And when we have an event here, like moving in the park, it's after dark. It's
Daniel might want to land his plane and go to his office, so keep it wide open.
So Daniel, help me out. Where are we at on our building? I mean, where are you at with this on our building?
Well, I think there's a few things to consider. This is the town of Mills River, and we love having the library here. Do we want to invest in rehabbing this existing structure for town purposes? or do we want to build a new facility to house town services and rehab this building for the library? We also need to figure out where we're going to put our recreation staff. And obviously some of that will go to the maintenance building, and then we could repurpose the existing maintenance facility. But I think it boils down to, do you want to have the library and town hall in one building? Do you want to have them separate? If you want to have them separate, where do you want to put the greater investment in putting in a newer town hall, or rehabbing an existing facility and building a new library space? I don't have a strong preference, but I do believe that all the facilities need to be on this. Well, if we could move town hall to a different property, of course, that's acquisition and a whole new project. But if we're keeping everything on this campus, we need to have the library, we need to have town hall, we need to have recreation facilities all year, because as you know, coming to the building as often as you do, people come to the library and use the park, and it's a great combination.
Right.
How expandable is this building?
Well, it really boils down to money, and I hate to say that, but I say that because there's utilities surrounding the building. And if we would move those, then as far as our footprint goes, we've got room to fill out. And we also could fill in this circle out here and kind of square off the building and pick up another few thousand square feet. I can't speak to anything as far as structurally whether or not we could go up with it or not, but the
I
footprint.
do believe we've looked at that maybe before you were here, and I don't think it was
Okay.
possible to build up.
But we could certainly expand the footprint basically in all directions. Not a lot, but it is buildable. It is doable.
If it was me, I would simply take and hopefully with a little help from the county, since the library is a county function, relocate, provide the land, but see if they wouldn't build a new building up closer to the road and with their own parking. And that just seems like, then we gain all that immediately, as soon as it's done, for office spaces, and see how far that gets us. I mean, because if we go to doing a whole lot with this, everybody knows how expensive building is. We're just slowing down any progress on the outside. Because when they start on one of these soccer fields, there's no telling what that soccer field's going to cost. I mean, they're terrible, and everybody knows. They think they do them right. Look at how many times that one on Sweden Creek Roads has been redone. It's almost every 2 or 3 years they're plowing it up and trying again, because it catches all that water. We're going to have a lot of water.
Just on the library front too, I used to work in Fletcher, and they've been having the same argument with the county. They have tried to give them land. They even offered to give them money towards the building, and the county basically said, if you provide the building, we'll provide the staff.
Heels dug in on that.
No, I'm sure.
They're not gonna, if you provide the space, they'll stay. That's basically, and that's exactly what they told Fletcher to do. So.
Right. But it may still be cheaper, and I hate to say it in an open meeting with everybody listening countywide, but it'd still be cheaper for us to go build them another building up here, no bigger than that is, and just have their own access, and they just run it from there. And then we gain all this that's already under roof here. I want to keep my staff together. I don't want to bust them up. I don't want to have them off-site. I'd rather keep them all to where they can holler down the hallway and still hear each other. I mean, because it's been that way since we started in the other building. I wouldn't have it no other way as long as I'm around. Fair statement. I mean, You're giggling, but you know it's true.
It's true.
Yeah. It's just the best way to run it. I had to run mine like that, even though it's outside. But things just would get done a whole lot easier, and one can cover for others a lot easier that way. And y'all are awesome about covering for each other,
I think it really boils down to, is this going to be town hall for the next 50 to 100 years? And if it is, then let's just decide on that, and we can start figuring out where to put everybody else.
Well, Daniel, the bad thing is we're just elected to 4 or 5 year terms anymore. So it's hard for us to say that, but I would hope it would be able to stay here for another, in this same general vicinity for the next 30, 40, 50 years.
Mhm.
That's me. Everybody else feel free to speak, you know. Um, I just don't want to, I want to make sure our master plan for our park allows for that and, and expansion and plenty of parking for this building.
Yeah, we're investigating too, because one thing we do have to consider, and this goes back to the grant requirements. So the Parks and Recreation Trust Fund grant is for Parks and Recreation. And so if we were looking at building a administrative town hall facility that does not have recreational use, we need to carve out that chunk of land to not include it with the grant application. That if
Gotcha.
there's 5 acres or whatever, if we think we're ever gonna build a, this site, we're gonna move, again, even if we're still on this property, which is definitely reasonable, if we're gonna move out of this building and build a new town hall facility somewhere else on this site, we need to look at chunking that out, so when we submit our grant application, they know. Or, I mean, we've talked that there are ways if we say, maybe if Parks and Rec offices are in there and there's a community room that we can rent out that has some recreational components, but then the cleanest way to do it would be if we could say, one day town hall, maybe here, let's not include that in our grant
If
application.
if I was going to do that, I would set aside that future building site. Then that would be another ideal location for town hall. Then the gym and everything could simply be replaced up on this here.
That's in this down field when they build it.
But I'm talking about years from now, you know, you know. It's a 50-year building when we build it. We're how many years into it? 12, 13, so 11, so 12 years. So we're, with some expanding, we could get by several years and stay inside here, staff-wise.
Well, we're in our discussion now.
Yes, we are.
The market being in the back in that shed, I know a lot of it's depending on whether or not that shed meets the requirements to be public safe. That building so much use for it to be a covered shed. The market's going to use it one day a week for half a day, and the rest of the time it's available to the park, to the people. It's big enough you could hold young kid bicycle training experiences. You could do outdoor yoga in the sun and not get blistered. You could have community events in there because it's big. The building that's proposed for it up here is not that big at all. And they would probably want that better off setting in the parking lot. Because they've got potentially near 70 vendors come. And the building down here would better house them than up here. And that would leave such a nice facility for the parks and the people to have it used for the rest of the time. And it is a great community thing. It promotes farming, it promotes community, and it's a great place where people like to go see their friends and neighbors and meet people. And if they drive down through there, they get to see the park too.
Well, that was, I mean, just going back to that discussion, again, size and all that can be tweaked at this point. And we would certainly talk with the farm market before we picked any size that would be needed. So I think the big question is, like, we know that facility is there, and do we want to repurpose it? But also, the question is that the best place for the farm market? And I know, like, again, some of this conversation needs to be had with the folks from the farm market. But again, long term, there may be a temporary use in the back, but would the market be better served if it had road frontage and had that visibility? And going back to traffic patterns and having, an extra few hundred cars driving by the soccer fields that are already busy on a Saturday. And so those are some of the things we're looking at. And again, get your feedback. We'll talk to the farm market, of course, and get their feedback. That doesn't mean temporarily they couldn't be under that structure even if it's suitable, but in the real, think about that long term. Would the farm market be better suited with the road, the visibility from the road? And they have the flags that are saying, well, don't tell the planning director, they'll have big flags.
Yeah.
Not really.
If they decide later on, and talking to them that that's good, if that building can be structurally sound, that's a good building worth saving for events because it is covered. They say it's getting hotter around here. I can tell you it is. Shade means a lot to younger people and older people. And, that it just has so much potential. Even if we wind up, if it's not sound, tearing it down and rebuilding it. Because on here, people have wanted shade and greenery and stuff. That's a great opening with a lot of potential.
Well, Sandra, I kind of come at it from what Nicole just said in the sense that when the town acquired the property next door, that building, that shed was a logical place for a home for the market. And I, like you, am a proponent to get the market in there as soon as possible, provided the building is sound. But anybody can look at that building, know it's reaching the end of its useful life. So that being a fact that I don't think is in dispute, that personally, I would like to see the market moved up to the front of the property for all the reasons that Nicole cited, that, it's for the traffic reasons and also for the exposure, visibility of the market. And, and going back to what the mayor said earlier is if we're going to have a carve out for funding purposes through the part of grant, then I would carve out the future building market and those parking spaces because you can shift the blobs around and change the different size, but I see that front of the property behind Mr. Hooper's property is being the future home of the market, the forever home of the market, as well as it may be an annex to the town hall. It may be a library. I mean, I'm thinking library personally, but I think that's where we need to go. And then if one day the town can acquire some of these properties that are on the highway, then, that might be the location of our $20 million indoor recreation facility with pools and courts and indoor running tracks and all that. But
We all have dreams.
but for the time being, knowing what we know, I think I agree with Shannon that I think the carve out should be in that front, and then the farm market I want on this property, and I think everybody will benefit from being on this property. But the future of the market, I believe, is up near the highway. It's just the natural fit was as soon as we got this property, it's like, hey, there's a home for them. We can get them close. But I don't think that's the final place. And if we're going to have to tear that building down and rebuild it, I think everybody'd be better served if we moved it towards the front of the property next to the highway.
Do you have to carve it out if you're going to temporarily use it? Like if they're going to use it, if it's good enough for right now, for the next 5-10 years, do you still have to carve it out when you're doing your?
Yeah, the farm market would be considered recreational use. So that the farm market is not an issue. The town hall, like potential town hall, even a library, I think would be considered recreational use. So I think the only thing as far as having to carve out for our grant in consideration is if we are thinking town hall is going to move. And in reality, we have, the max grant we can get is $500,000. Carving out a few acres, we can still use it for recreation use down the road if we decide that's where the rec center should go or if that's where the library or a town hall should go. I would rather be on the safe side. But just know, whatever we carve out, if we're going to move town hall on this property, it would have to go in that location to carve out that chunk. Well, wherever we decide.
The only thing that works right to put it in my.
What about that exit only road? Do we need to, for this grant application, they're gonna wanna see that being part of this park, correct?
We need to have at least one primary point of ingress and egress inside the current one.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to have that. If we show that second one, we can show the future access location not included in an immediate grant request, so that it still gives you flexibility.
Okay.
on the grant. I think it's important from a use standpoint because of loading. That, families and kids and people that would come in and out the multi-purpose field use events. I think it's important. It's just a matter of knowing.
I was just worrying about us setting aside a piece. Do we need to move over, give that right of way through for the park? And if we do that, are we still able to use it as part of the town halls? Okay, okay.
Yeah, and that's the other thing to remember on this. Other than whatever we decide to put in phase one, this can all change. I mean, just like we did with the original master plan of this park, we start building things. I gave Daniel this example. Yes, we're doing multi-purpose fields right now. We do another, comprehensive survey in 5 years. All of a sudden, cricket has become the hot sport, and there's this huge demand that we need to build cricket fields. Whatever that is, that doesn't mean, what we put on this plan doesn't mean it can't change until we apply for the grant and put it out there. We have to have a phase one, and within 5 years, we have to do that phase one. But we're going to be very specific on what that 5 years is. We want to make sure it's attainable and make sure again, that could be our riverbank restoration and our first section of walking trail in our phase one, and maybe a restroom. We'd have to see what we want to make sure it's attainable. And so just because it's on here now doesn't mean 10 years down the road and we haven't filled that space, be like, oh no, we said we were putting a splash pad and nobody likes splash pads anymore, and it can change to something else, or ninja courses aren't a thing anymore, and all that can change. As I said, the only thing once we do this, because if we apply for this grant, this goes into a permanent recreation easement, saying that for the life of this property, it is going to be in recreation use. So if there was just any piece of this property that we feel would not be specifically have a recreation component, we want to make sure we carve it out. Correct. Right. You have to match at $500,000, and our land value is well above that. So the max we can get back is that $500,000. So cutting off 5 acres, 7 acres, we've still got plenty of match. Mm-hmm.
So as a group,
That's a lot.
we feel good telling her to do that for us for our next viewing.
You're talking about carving out that future building. So,
Just to clarify, when you say future building, that would be for administrative use or other use than recreation.
right.
Okay.
Can I ask another question?
Absolutely.
While we're still in the planning phase here, so y'all are talking about making this an exit only? Is the other one here gonna be an entrance only,
That would continue to be two-way.
to be two-way?
Yeah, ideally, the other one would also be two-way. There's just not enough property there to make it entry and exit. So we feel it's more important. When you think about a soccer game, everybody kind of arrives. You have your early arrivers, your late arrivers, but when that game's over, you need to be able to exit people quickly. And so that's why we put the priority on exit.
What I
Ideally,
was,
we could both. If we could get that property in the front,
Right.
ideally it would be both.
what I was thinking was, I know how hard it is to get out on 191. And I'm sure y'all do too, going out down here. It's difficult. And then with the entrance to the River Oaks over here, those entrances are pretty close together. If there's any way we could align those and put a red light up there, and they'll have like a sensor, that way when somebody pulls up there, they can safely get in and out of the road from both developments, because I know turning in and out of your place, Jim, it's a little hairy sometimes. There's been a lot of people rear-ended. And if we could you know, kind of line that up when they're developing and setting it up, that would be a big safety feature.
Yeah, I do agree that would be great, but like again, just because of that narrow strip of property, unless we were to gain either an easement or property on either or both sides of that, we're very limited on where we would be able to realign that.
And that culvert location again
And that-
might be a
that
issue
could
with
be an
this.
issue too. Yeah, that may take the whole thing away, and then
Turn it
we're
all the way down.
just looking at our,
Right.
Well, the roads go over the culverts, you know, it's just where they run it out at.
Mhm.
If they keep it there, and maybe they could work with you from that development, you know, to line up for a red light or something. Not a roundabout. So we're clear.
So there's a couple questions I just want to make sure that we have some consensus on is, seems to be that town hall is going to be within this building, or it's going to be on the parcel that we're going to carve out. So for our planning purposes, um, we're going to go with that. We go with that? And there was another, the farm market was the other question. Do we want to plan for it to be at the back permanently, at the front permanently? Sounded like the consensus might have been the front, but I know that, I don't think we got a poll.
Well, if they're gonna carve that out for the town hall building, that can't be there.
It could.
Yeah.
It could.
Yeah.
yeah, there's plenty of room.
Yeah, it's not actually a restriction on
If-
land use.
So,
or
yeah,
anything
it
like
doesn't
that.
mean you can't put recreation or farm market use there too. And honestly, the town hall, if it was to be a town hall and a farm market, only being Saturdays is a very compatible use because town hall is closed on Saturdays, and you can potentially do some really neat things there with front lawn, and then you have the parking and that sort of thing. So I do think there'd be a lot of potential there for a good partnership between the town hall building and the farm market.
Anything else?
Question.
Sure.
If the grant is $500,000, would it pay to just have enough land under that easement under recreation easement to get the grant? Then the rest of it could still be used for recreation, but it's not a permanent restriction. So if something came up 20, 30 years down the line, that land would be available. Would that make sense, or do they look more favorably if there's a larger piece of property?
I would think they'd definitely look more favorable on
There's a
larger piece of
scoring
property.
system, the best I remember.
Got
And
it.
the more components you show in your master plan, even though they can change, it shows your broad spectrum of what could be done there. So that's how the $500,000 are very rare. I mean, we did get one,
Mhm.
but they're very rare. So,
Sure, and that makes sense. It just seems like that's a whole lot of land to tie up
mhm.
for in perpetuity for $500,000.
And we might know someone that we could talk to who would write these grants in-house, or
You're looking at it.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was
no.
part of our,
okay.
that was part of our
So,
design, helping with the grant
so
application.
can you weigh in on that at all?
I think the more elements that you have and you're showing this as a park, their goal is to try and get that recreation land or land to remain a park.
Right.
And so it scores much higher on there than if you had it sectioned off into different uses. And the other piece of that is you have a certain time frame in which you're allowed to use the land value as your match.
Okay.
And so you need to make sure that you use that land value within that time frame. Not a year or 2 years, but it's pretty quickly after you acquire the land. So right now you have that to use it as your match.
Okay.
So you would definitely want to go for a grant fairly soon.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Amber Porter, and I live in Mills River Village, kind of behind there. But one thing I thought would be something worth considering would be between those two river access points there. I know there's wetland back there that is pretty cool in terms of talking about wildlife and things like that. I don't know if there'd be any consideration for doing some sort of like boardwalk or something back in there. So you've got your shade, you've got animals, you've got, your nature studies, things like that. It just might be something a little bit different, something maybe worth considering there.
I can just weigh in on that a little bit. Anytime you build in the floodplain like that, we know the river comes in. So investing things like a boardwalk would get washed away probably a couple times a year, but I think there still are some maybe natural surface trails, some educational opportunities that we will certainly pursue in that.
So what else you need from us tonight?
I think that we're good. I think it's on us now to come back to you with all these ideas, and we may follow up with questions. I feel like there was support for the multi-purpose fields. I'm not sure we got consensus on the market, but it it sounds like, if I'm hearing things correctly, if we could use the building in the back, even if it's temporary, that would be a great solution. And then if that exceeds its lifespan, there's a desire to have it up front from a site circulation and visibility standpoint. So it's a good anchor for the town with whatever would put in. And then we would work with the farmer's market to figure out the size and what's needed.
Yes.
Is that?
Yeah, and I think when you work with staff to figure out how much we're going to set aside for municipal building in the future, we need to kind of think about where that potential market location would be and the size it would need to be. Because I think it's consensus it's not going to fit in a little pod. So with the angles and everything we're working there, that might need to come across even further, just because we just need to set aside for the municipal building, but we don't know exactly how big that's going to need to be at the time of we build. So the farmer's market the building may stay about the same size, but the municipal building may have to get larger than what we're expecting today.
Just on the building again, I just want, because I'm just going back to our conversation last night from the Parks Advisory Board, Laura, again, I know Tammy's here too to weigh in, about how important that future recreation gymnasium is. And so if it's not spelled out, and I do think we get that feedback from the public too. So, I mean, is that something we need to look at? And if that area we think should be designated for future municipal, do we need to look at another space for down the road of that future? And again, that could be included that doesn't have to be carved out, other than to make sure we save space for it and it makes sense with traffic flow
And with that building, like you've got it designed now, the parking needs to be close.
The parking needs to be close to it, that recreation.
Mm-hmm.
That's for ease of use. So I interpreted that if you had the town hall, we would still have a recreation building somewhere on site from a planning standpoint, even if it was a future recreation building. That's something that came through on your comprehensive plan, on the survey you just did, as far as wanting to have access to indoor recreation. And what we reviewed last night is that municipalities of your size right now typically don't offer indoor recreation at that capacity. However, you are growing rapidly, and that threshold of becoming small town to slightly larger is at about 17,000, and you will approach that. So if you don't plan for it now, you're going to approach that, and it's something that's already desired. So yeah, I think it, from a planning standpoint, needs to be considered and included based on your current needs assessment from your community. That's not saying you have to go out and build the building right now, but I think we need to make sure that there's space out there.
So like on this master plan, if we got a grant and we built this pickleball court where it's located now, could we remove it and put it somewhere else in the future, even though it was provided grant money early on? Then we put the gym in that location, let's just say.
You have to keep your use.
So as long as we can relocate it, have it up and going, then, okay, gotcha.
You would have to, if you received grant money to build something, you would have to replace that use.
Okay.
Have to submit a new plan.
And Sarah,
Okay.
correct me if I'm wrong, for a built facility, so for land acquisition, it's forever recreation use. For any grant money we would get as far as Parks and Recreation Trust Fund or like our playground grant, things like that, it's 25 years. So it's not a forever, if you build a pickleball, you have to keep pickleball forever.
Okay.
But it is that 25 years, but as I said, you can move something down the road, but obviously for planning purposes, it would be most effective to not build something and then move in later. Especially as you're planning for things like utilities, sewer, water.
Yeah.
Because if you want to plan for that capacity, you may only need a certain size sewer pipe if you just have one little restroom, but now you have a whole rec center, locker rooms, and all that in there. You want to make sure we do that properly. So, including this building, do we need to find space for essentially 2 other buildings? And I don't know that we need to identify which one is which at this point, but a future recreation center, a town hall, and potentially a library. That would be, again, all on the same campus, but potentially separate facilities? Or do we think one of those buildings, again, could be multi-use? I mean, there are plenty of recreation centers and libraries that go hand in hand. I mean, that's a fairly common model, but the footprint looks bigger. So that's where we just need to kind of, do we want to look at 3 separate sites within this property, or 2 separate sites where either a town hall and a library is combined, or a town hall and a recreation center, or a recreation center and a library is combined? Those are the kind of things we would just need to, do we need 3 footprints, or do we just need 2?
We can look at some diagrams too of how that would look. Just quickly so that might help.
That would help.
Because I think we're gonna need to look at how you move around those and access them.
See, I'm sitting here thinking right now, gymnasium, if a soccer fields need this kind of parking, the gymnasium's gonna be similar, right, for parking? So we gotta think that through a little bit.
Well, I think if you're gonna build another town hall somewhere up in, it could easily be 2 stories.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even with a recreation center library, when you plan for, this one, we are limited because it wasn't built to structurally go up. As we look at our footprint, we can look at a lot of town halls. You have your offices that don't have a lot of face-to-face interaction on a second floor, and then your footprint can be smaller. You're not taking up as much land. So, yes, you absolutely can look at building upward instead of always building out.
But my objective in the carve out was simply to not tie the hands of future councils. If they decide that there needs to be a town hall and it needs to be in this front section, that's still an option available to me. But I wasn't looking for a plan to come back that said, future town hall or something at this location. I think town hall needs to be where it is because this is the hub of the property. And then, Daniel outlined some ways that this could be expanded if not overtaking the library space and putting the library on here. But I think there's enough space in that what's already been identified on these 2 options that could accommodate the recreation building and or a library. But anyway, I didn't want to make it look as though we were trying to put a town hall out front here. I just wanted the carve out was because it didn't really come at an expense because it wouldn't harm our chances of getting the grant for the property acquisition, but it would, like I said, or wouldn't tie the hands of future town councils if other options were available and that was the best place. It wasn't
Yeah,
tied up in perpetuity.
absolutely. And again, all of this can change. I was just thinking, again, just going back to the conversation I had with my Parks Advisory Board last night and having that called out space for that indoor recreation. And so after hearing this conversation, I know they're thinking, well, if you're going to put town hall there, then where are you putting my gymnasium? And so do we need to call out that additional space? Because I know that's the question. You're already saying, I'm looking at me. The questions I'm going to get, if that could future be something else, then I'm going to get the questions of where are we doing this? So that's what I was just trying to get the,
But you're telling me the library, or if the town, not we, but if the town decided it wanted to have a freestanding library facility, it could go anywhere on this park. It's not, because it's considered recreation. So yeah, I don't think we have to have more than the 2 footprints. 'Cause like I said, I think town hall should always remain here, and then if the library gets moved, that's to be determined. But I think that it still needs to show future indoor recreation facility like it is on these 2 options, just with the carve out for.
For one of those, where one of those soccer fields are.
Or the second basement.
They're really interested. We need second basement. Carving out a bunch of property that was acquired other than the one that we talked about up front here. Simply the fact that I'm thinking about the grant holders. I'm thinking that if I see it, the next valley comes in, they want $500,000 on money, but they carved out 3 and 4 places in there. Then I'm gonna say, no, I don't think so much. I might be thinking wrong, but I think the bigger piece of property that we can leave into the recreation part of it is gonna increase our chances of storing that. That's just what I'm thinking. So I'm okay with one up front, fine. And the rest of them, I think we can make do with the property part.
Recreation also, you don't necessarily have to carve a spot out.
No.
no, we wouldn't carve it out, but I guess my question was, does it need to be identified on here?
I think so.
So that's what, that they're, like, again, doesn't have to be carved out specifically, but as I said, I know from my recreation board, they're gonna wanna see that little box on the map, whether it stays there or not. I know that's the feedback I'll get.
It also helps down the road, 10 years from now, when you redo your comprehensive plan, that the best practice is to redo that townwide comprehensive plan for recreation every 10 years. If that's in there and there's a commitment for it and it shows that it's still a need and you go for it and then you want to go for grant funding or partnerships or something else, having that in the plan it helps build that case for the need that the community's expressing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we're here for.
Thank you. Just on, Michael.
Yeah, it's on.
Totally agree with what Jeff just said. He said the way I'm thinking in my head, I would love to see the town stay here in the middle. I really would. I get the flexibility for future councils though. Am I reading either concept incorrectly that we're removing a direct road from a connection road from from Haywood to Town Hall? Am I reading both? That direct route's not in either of these.
That's correct.
That's correct.
And
Is there a reason for that?
we've pretty much got her working on a different plan. The reroute was to go, and you're welcome to explain it better than I can, but come up, go over, hit Hooper Lane, come over and come back in. We're not about, the council at the time is not about that. So we got her gonna look at how else we could do that.
More direct, or at least
Stay inside our own or something.
Okay.
And the reason for that is safety and
Playground right there adjacent.
Yeah, we have a lot of safety issues, especially between the library connection and kids run out into that road. The fact that it's a straight shot, people just fly through. And if you put a road through the middle of something, it makes you feel like you're in 2 separate places.
Well, the roundabout will be there no matter what.
Mhm.
The traffic circle, whatever you call it, will
Mhm.
be there no matter what. So I think that alleviates a lot of that. But having direct access to that's very appealing to me. I hope it stays the center of it. The observation tower, my kids and I were talking about that last night. That was great. So I think that's something having here at the center. Maybe not for this meeting, but I'd like to see the town council proactively go after that triangle right there, for sale or not. There's a conversation to be had. It's a small town. We all know.
Which one?
Not yours, Sandra. Not yours. This ain't my first town meeting. I got that. I got through that already. So the Hooper property, right there. We all know there's first right of refusal, informal or formal. I don't care. I think we could proactively initiate a conversation, and I think that might change a lot of this conversation.
It's my understanding that, and Sandra may know, that Dexter has not settled with the state yet. Is that a fair statement?
They're still going to court.
Right. He will though. It will.
Exactly.
Right. And
But-
that's not his. And that brought up something. I don't know how much closer that right of way comes to our little point there. Sandra's front right property where the exit only road
Right here.
is. How close does that bring? Jeff, do you know the answer to that? You looked at me like you might have an answer. Yeah.
The access, the right of way comes up to right where that, the green point is right there. That's what would allow us to even have access.
Well,
Once it's expanded,
Once it's
the
expanded.
road going through the road will be up to that. Because
Without
without
that,
that, coming through there's completely off the road bed now. It's all over there and it's going straight up through there.
okay. Thank you.
Well, in a previous meeting, Mike Malachek pulled up the county GIS, take it for what it's worth, but they showed the new right of way and it blunted that triangle and showed 40, it was showing on the GIS at 47 feet. So, you know, again, you can't take that to the bank, but that's kind of what we're,
It's not wide enough. Especially with it's cold.
Maybe.
Pickup truck cold.
Well, I don't want to take a lot of time on this, but talking about Hooper Lane, my understanding is that the property owners that have refused right of way to pave, that would be on the right side. What about on the left side? Is there sufficient width?
On our side?
On our side, that property owner, have they said absolutely no? Because the possibility could exist if there was a way to get that property, the road could move over onto town property. And then that would, you know, it wouldn't matter what the property on the east side there said, because the right of way can move over on the town property. I think there's a ditch or a stream that might have to be, but as part of a restoration or something like that could possibly happen.
That's
And-
the. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
What's that?
Go ahead.
Then because then it would all the way up to the bridge is town property, except for right there at the maintenance field, that property.
I was just gonna say that's really the only obstacle is that ditch on the immediately west of Cooper Lane. But other than
Mhm.
that, there's no reason that the road couldn't be shifted.
So if
Yes,
the
sir.
road shifted, then that takes away the right of way discussion. If we gave it to the state, it's only that one property up adjacent to the road. And do we know if they've refused or not, or if that's
Well,
on the left
we
side?
don't.
We don't
We
know.
don't know.
Because then the possibility could open up for a traffic signal there. It would be a hard sell to get a traffic signal just for the town's part. But if there were a signal on Hooper Lane, which then would allow the town to access Hooper Lane and have a signalized connection back onto 280 or 191, that might make that more attractive than even having a main access off of 191, because that would be a way. I don't know if that's crazy talking or not, but sitting back there looking.
The
Yeah.
left is completely the town.
Mm-hmm.
What's that?
The left is completely the town.
Yeah, the issue is the blue line stream. It runs parallel on town property or in the right of way of Hooper Lane would have to be relocated.
The state right now, when I left the state in, it was 18, some places we're paying $1 million a mile to pave a road. So having a budget and the number of unpaved roads is dwindling. And the state's philosophy is any road you can pave, because it's just a bottomless pit. Constant maintenance, dust, all those things. Breathing silica is not real healthy. So I think that the state would probably, have budget available if they could get the right of way. And if moving the stream is move it and restore it and, get some credit there, because anything you do to improve a stream, you get credit for, you can use. And it's just that one piece of property up next to the road. If you could scroll, would it be up or down? The other way, the other way. Right to the left of Hooper Lane, right at the intersection with 191.
It's all
There.
been paved.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm sorry. So the
It's paved to about right here.
Yeah.
so
One
from there
issue,
on, there's no reason we couldn't work again.
one issue we may run into, Jeff, and you're more of able to figure this out now, but the existing baseball field. I think that's an issue with moving the stream.
Okay.
I think that would be an issue when I looked at it before myself. There's 100 or so feet there that we've got nowhere to go except
to
into the
go.
baseball field.
Okay.
But
I'll go out and look at it a little
yeah,
further and
see what you think.
think about it. But
Yeah.
just, if there's a way, even if we could get it paved to that, I know the state doesn't like to leave the gap, but
And what I might ask of you is when I can get us a meeting together with DOT, if like me, you and Daniel or something could meet with him together because you're going to talk their talk and I don't know nothing about it. So
absolutely.
if that's a possibility, it might.
Wasn't it like a while back? Wasn't the DOT partially on board with it, weren't they?
Yeah.
I think they've been on board with it for a while. It's just a matter of the right of way.
See, it's just that skinny strip. They'd love to get that knocked on through there.
Yeah, because it's not good to have unpaved road in between two paved. I've heard of that being done for spite, but that's another story over a Dr. Pepper or something like that. But, okay, thank you.
Okay, so what do you need? We'll move on.
I think we're good.
Okay.
I think we have a lot of homework to do, and I'm sure we'll come back with questions and follow-up
Okay.
once we put them in the paper. But we'll have our notes from last night and our notes from this evening, and I will circle that back to Nicole and make sure. I like to do it. Here's what we've heard,
Yeah.
and make sure
Right.
it's actually what we've heard.
Right.
So we'll circle back with you.
Are we still doing the dots?
I was going to, but I feel like we've had the discussion in order for us to be able to move forward with at least a refined concept to get feedback. So I think we're okay.
Okay. And I think I personally, as soon as you get a new draft up, if you can, even though we ain't maybe got time to meet that quick with the whole, get them to us, so we can flip them over and write our questions on the back. And I think it might make the next one go a lot quicker for us, so we can be more prepared. We come in and we see it and we're all big-eyed, and then we get into the nitty-gritty of it. I think if we take this thing home and just start looking at it, and then we can actually walk to our neighbors or whoever and say, what do you think of this?
Absolutely.
Because we're probably missing the boat on a few things, and people out there is probably thinking, well, we should ask this. They're going to get a chance to.
Yeah,
That's
and
a
they
good thing.
will. Everybody, this is we talked to the Parks Advisory Board, we brought to you all, and as we refine that concept, we do have a specific meeting with Mills River Village next week. I'll be attending their homeowners association to discuss with them, but then as we refine this plan, there will be a broader public input for folks to, of course, have their opinion on that. So, and again, just because the meeting's over, if you have questions, you have other thoughts, you have that brilliant idea of how we can better connect, please shoot me an email, reach out to Daniel, call me. And, this is just a continuous process. So
It only gets better with the more input we get. So we really are open. If you have something in an aha moment, we'd love to hear it.
So the grant application is due in May. Ideally, the month previous, you have the opportunity, if you can get your grant application together, you can submit it. They review it and give you feedback. So if there's things you're missing, things that they don't think look quite right. And so ideally, we would like to hit that mark. So our plan is, ideally, we will have a plan for you all to adopt in April. And that's not that far away. So we're really trying to do this quickly and bring it back to you. And if we need to do another one of these work sessions, we can certainly do it. I don't know that Sarah would be able to be here in person, but we could do it via Zoom, or I can do it, or we can talk and get that figured out. But yeah, we can burn the midnight oil. We'll spend lots of evenings together between now and March.
Okay.
I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you
Anything else from
a lot
us?
of good
That's it. Just
information,
remind you.
a lot of good
next week.
thought.
Okay, if someone make a motion for us to adjourn this special meeting.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn this special meeting.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Oh. Okay.